The first thing I remember is the soft, breathless gasp that froze me in place before my eyes even understood what they were seeing. The office was unusually bright that morning, sunlight slicing through the tall windows of the design studio like pale golden ribbons across the white walls and open desks. I had pushed open the door to the executive lounge because I heard something fall inside, and in my rush to help, I stepped into a moment that shouldn't have belonged to me. My boss, Aria Solberg, stood halfway turned, her blouse unbuttoned as she changed into a fresh one, her face drenched with the frustration of a spilled latte she must have knocked over moments earlier. She stared at me in stunned disbelief, her cheeks turning a soft shade of pink beneath the harsh daylight. And before I could retreat or apologize, she composed herself, lifted her chin, and said in a steady, almost trembling voice, "We'll pretend you didn't see anything, right?" That single line became the beginning of everything: my fear, her vulnerability, and the story that would change both of our lives. If you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Chronicles. It truly helps this community grow. For a long moment, neither of us moved. I was Nathan Caro, just a junior layout artist who never expected to be noticed by anyone above middle management, let alone by Aria, the 36-year-old creative director whose reputation in the company was carved out of discipline, brilliance, and a nearly intimidating calm. She didn't raise her voice, didn't lose her cool, didn't tolerate laziness, and never mixed personal moments with her professional life. And now I had barged into a moment as personal as it gets on a bright Tuesday morning, the kind where people are barely ready to face inboxes and deadlines, let alone colleagues walking in while they're changing clothes. I backed out immediately, muttering apologies, closing the door with hands that shook more than the doorframe. I walked back to my desk with my face burning, terrified about losing my job, imagining the HR email that would arrive by lunchtime, but nothing happened that morning. No email. No confrontation. No reprimand delivered in Aria's steady, cold tone. Instead, something else began: a quiet shift, almost too subtle to notice at first. When I crossed paths with her in the hallway later that day, she didn't avoid me. She simply nodded, her expression softer than usual. It unsettled me more than the morning incident did, because it made me wonder what she was thinking behind that maintained composure. Everyone feared her or idolized her. Some said she didn't even know how to smile. Others believed she didn't feel anything at all. But I knew, at least now, that she was human, capable of being embarrassed, startled, unguarded. The next few days passed in a haze of awkward glances and lingering tension. The sunlit hallways, the bright open workspace, it all felt like it was holding its breath whenever she walked by my desk. Yet she never called me in, never mentioned what happened, never treated me differently. That was somehow worse. My guilt grew heavier with every sunrise, the daylight reminding me of how bright and unmistakable everything had been in that room. Eventually, I convinced myself that the best way to move forward was to work harder, minimize mistakes, and stay invisible. But the universe seemed determined to do the exact opposite. A week later, the company received an urgent contract for a major architectural exhibition. We needed new layouts, new visual concepts, and a completely redesigned model mock-up. The deadline was impossible: 1 week. People panicked. Managers whispered. A few senior designers even considered taking sick leave to avoid the stress. But Aria didn't flinch. Instead, she calmly outlined the plan, assigned tasks, and to my disbelief, placed me on the core redesign team, something I had dreamed about but never dared hope for. She said my portfolio had potential. She said I had a fresh perspective. But part of me wondered if she felt forced to be kind after what happened, or if she was testing me, waiting for me to prove that I did not deserve this chance. I worked harder than ever before. I stayed late into the night, reviewing sketches, fine-tuning transitions, studying the way sunlight hit architectural models and reference photos to recreate the crisp realism Aria loved. The days blended into each other, always set in daytime hours as bright office windows reminded me how little time we had left. I began arriving earlier, before the rest of the team, sometimes before even the janitors finished their morning rounds. One morning, as another day of pressure began, I found Aria sitting alone in the conference room, staring blankly at the glass wall as sunlight illuminated her tired face. That was the moment I saw the cracks in her perfectly controlled exterior. Dark circles beneath her eyes, the slump of her shoulders, the quiet heaviness that didn't fit the image everyone had of her. She wasn't cold. She wasn't heartless. She was overwhelmed, burdened, human. And somehow, she trusted me enough to let me see that the days kept growing harder. Team members began arguing. The models weren't aligning. The concepts weren't blending as expected. At one point, one of the senior designers stormed out, leaving a pile of half-finished work on the table. People whispered that the project was collapsing. I saw fear in Aria's eyes for the first time, not fear of failure, but fear of disappointing everyone who believed in her leadership. And I realized then how lonely her position must be. Everyone saw her strength, but no one saw her exhaustion. I wanted to help more. Not just for the project, but for her. I pushed myself further. I redesigned entire sections overnight, reworked 3 different layout styles, studied topographic lines until my vision blurred. On the final day before the presentation, Aria approached my desk for the first time since the incident in the lounge. She didn't bring up that moment. She didn't need to. Instead, she placed her hand gently on the desk beside my sketch pads, her voice low, saying that she noticed my effort and appreciated it more than I knew. The warmth in her voice, the sincerity, it surprised me, softened me, anchored me. We finished the project together under the bright afternoon sunlight that streamed across the presentation room. When the board reviewed our final model, complete with its minimalist theme, crisp lines, and realistic shadows, they approved it unanimously. The tension broke like a fragile shell. People smiled, some even hugged each other. And for the first time since I had known her, I saw Aria smile, not the polite, corporate one, but a genuine, tired, grateful smile that made her look years younger. After the meeting, she asked me to walk with her to the rooftop terrace. The day was clear, warm, peaceful, the kind of day that made the city skyline look like an endless promise. She leaned on the railing, the wind lifting strands of her dark hair as she stared out into the distance. She told me she had been dealing with more than work, her father's illness, the loneliness of carrying a leadership position without support, the fear that people expected perfection from her even when she felt completely broken. She admitted that the morning I walked in on her changing had embarrassed her deeply, not because of vanity, but because she had just finished crying after a difficult call from the hospital. That's why her hands were shaking. That's why she dropped her coffee. That's why she reacted the way she did. Hearing her story felt heavy, like being handed a fragile truth she had carried alone for too long. I felt my own chest tighten with empathy. I realized then that the moment I feared had actually been the one that made her see me not as an employee, but as another human being capable of understanding her pain. She said she appreciated that I never mentioned it to anyone, never made it awkward, never let it change the respect between us. And in that quiet daylight on the rooftop, I found myself wanting to protect her the same way she protected the entire team, with quiet strength, steady endurance, hidden vulnerability. As the weeks passed, our connection deepened into something unspoken but undeniably human. Not romance, not friendship in the typical sense, but a profound mutual respect built from shared struggles and unexpected understanding. She began trusting me with bigger responsibilities, and I began trusting myself more. The studio environment brightened. Team members seemed more united. Even Aria's sharp edges softened a little, replaced by a calm warmth she no longer tried to hide. I grew too, not just professionally, but emotionally. I learned that everyone, no matter how strong, has moments where sunlight reveals their shadows. Months later, during another bright afternoon, Aria told me her father finally started recovering. She seemed lighter, almost weightless, as she thanked me again, not for what happened accidentally that morning, but for everything afterward. For taking responsibility, for showing compassion, for helping her carry the pressure she had silently endured for too long. I didn't know how to respond. I only knew that her gratitude left an imprint on me that I would carry for the rest of my life. The truth is, sometimes the moments we fear the most become the ones that change us. Sometimes embarrassment becomes connection. Sometimes accidents become beginnings. And sometimes seeing someone at their most unguarded teaches us how to be gentler with them and with ourselves. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of the power of compassion, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Chronicles to support more stories like this. Before I end, I have a special request.